While Noor was in the hospital losing the baby she'd waited 3 years to have, her sister-in-law was in the family group chat telling everyone Noor had done something to cause it. No proof, no basis, just a quiet, deliberate campaign to turn an entire family against a grieving woman while she was still recovering. What that sister-in-law didn't know was that the group chat she was using as a weapon had a setting she'd completely forgotten about, one that was about to hand Noor everything she needed. This is a story about grief being weaponized by someone who was supposed to be family, and what happens when the truth finally catches up to the person who lied. Noor married Bilal 4 years ago into a large, close-knit family where every holiday, every birthday, every small occasion turned into a full house of relatives. Bilal's older sister, Rabia, had always been a little distant with Noor, polite, but never warm, the kind of relationship that never became unfriendly, but never quite became close either. Noor and Bilal tried for a baby for almost 3 years before finally getting pregnant. The family was thrilled. Bilal's mother started talking about names within the first week. Rabia, who had 2 children of her own, sent a congratulatory message in the family group chat that read, in Noor's memory, a little more performative than warm, but Noor didn't think much of it at the time. Family dynamics are complicated, and not everyone shows excitement the same way. The pregnancy was considered high risk from early on, given how long it had taken, and some minor complications flagged at the first scans. Noor's doctor was careful, cautious, scheduling more frequent checkups than usual. Noor followed every instruction precisely. She stopped traveling. She rested more than she ever had in her life. She wanted this baby more than she had wanted almost anything. At 19 weeks, during a routine appointment, the doctor couldn't find a heartbeat. Noor was hospitalized for the procedure that followed, and she stayed for 2 additional days for monitoring. Bilal barely left her side. His parents visited briefly, quiet and supportive, the way grief usually moves through families who genuinely care. While Noor was still in that hospital bed, Rabia posted in the extended family group chat, the one with nearly 30 relatives, including aunts, uncles, and cousins, who weren't close enough to know the real details of anything. She wrote that she had heard Noor had been overexerting herself against doctors' orders, attending events she wasn't supposed to attend, and that some people in the family believed Noor's own carelessness was the reason for the loss. None of it was true. Noor had followed every medical instruction without exception. But grief makes people in a family want explanations, even false ones. And Rabia's message spread through the group exactly the way she seemed to want it to. Within 2 days, several relatives who barely spoke to Noor regularly were treating her with a cold, careful distance whenever Bilal mentioned her name, the unmistakable tone of people who'd been told something they hadn't bothered to verify. Bilal's mother, normally warm toward Noor, started asking pointed questions about what Noor had been doing in the weeks before the loss, clearly repeating something she'd heard rather than something she'd witnessed herself. Noor found out about the messages from a cousin who felt uncomfortable with how things were unfolding, and quietly forwarded screenshots, partly out of concern, partly out of disbelief that Rabia would do something like this while Noor was still recovering in a hospital bed. Noor didn't respond to anyone right away. She was still grieving, still physically recovering, and she wasn't going to fight a rumor from a hospital bed while processing the worst loss of her life. But once she was home and steadier, she started quietly gathering what she needed. The cousin who'd sent the screenshots agreed to keep them, dated and intact, in case anyone questioned their authenticity later. Noor also requested her complete medical records from the hospital, every appointment, every instruction she'd followed, every note her doctor had made about her caution and compliance throughout the pregnancy. It was all there, time-stamped, official, undeniable. Then Noor remembered something most people in that group chat had forgotten existed. The family group had been created years earlier with a setting, still active, that allowed full message history to be exported by any admin, a feature added for a member who'd once needed to recover lost wedding planning details. Bilal's father was still listed as an admin. He had no idea Rabia's claims weren't true, and once Noor calmly explained the situation to Bilal, who was furious on her behalf, he asked his father directly to pull the full message history. It captured everything. Not just the lies Rabia posted publicly, but private side conversations she'd had with 2 other relatives, coordinating the narrative beforehand. deciding how to frame it before she ever posted anything in the main group. Bilal's father called a family meeting, the kind reserved for serious matters, with the relevant relatives present, including Rabia. Noor wasn't even the one who presented anything. She didn't need to be in the room performing her own defense. Bilal's father did it, calmly, methodically, reading the time-stamped medical records first, then the original group chat messages, then the private side conversations Rabia hadn't expected anyone to ever see. Rabia tried to explain it away as concern that had been misunderstood. Nobody in the room accepted that, especially once the private messages were read aloud. The ones where she'd specifically coordinated how to phrase things so it would sound like concern rather than accusation. Bilal's mother, who had unknowingly repeated Rabia's claims to Noor directly, was visibly devastated once she understood what she'd actually been part of. She apologized to Noor in front of everyone, which mattered more to Noor than anything that happened to Rabia afterward. Rabia was asked to apologize directly. She did, stiffly, clearly more concerned about her own standing in the family than genuine remorse. But by then it didn't matter whether she meant it. The entire extended family had seen the records, seen the screenshots, seen the coordinated messages. The narrative she'd spent weeks building had completely collapsed in front of the same audience she'd built it for. Noor and Bilal went on to have a healthy daughter the following year. The family rallied around them properly this time, the way they should have the first time. Rabia's relationship with most of the family has remained strained since that meeting, not because anyone is actively punishing her, but because trust, once broken, that deliberately, during someone's worst moment, doesn't rebuild quickly or quietly. Noor doesn't talk about it much anymore. What she does say, when it comes up, is that grief is hard enough without someone using it as a weapon, and that the people who do that usually end up exposing more about themselves than they ever manage to pin on anyone else.